How to kill your church app. That's what we're going to be talking about today on another edition of the Church Solutions Podcast.
Welcome to the Church Solutions Podcast, brought to you by JSL Solutions. The Church Solutions Podcast is designed to help equip you and your church in the use of technology and other tools and services. And now, here are your hosts, Steve Lacey and Phil Thompson.
How to kill your church app. That's what we're going to be talking about today on another edition of the Church Solutions Podcast.
Hi, my name is Steve Lacey.
And my name is Phil Thompson, and we come to you every week, and we are a company called JSL Solutions, which has, three products we use?
We have StreamingChurch.tv, provides live and on-demand streaming for churches.
Okay.
Church App Live, which is an interactive app for your church, and myflock.com.
When myflock.com is a church management system as well as websites.
Content management and a social network.
Social networking,
within your church.
Yeah, been around for a long time. So we generally talk a lot about tech-related things, although there are times we talk about leadership things for your church, other subjects, because Steve and I have been involved in church work for many, many decades. We used to consult President Nixon on ministry things. No, we never did that. But we've been around for a while.
When I was in junior high school, I did consult with...
Well, yeah, we're not that old. But anyhow, today we are going to talk about stuff that's more tech-related, and it has to do with kind of keeping the momentum going on your app, or, if you have a church app, we want to share some things that can help you keep people going to the app.
Well, the title of this was How to Kill Your App in Your Church, but we're actually, if you don't follow what we're going to say, then there's a pretty surefire way to how to kill your app. So.
Right, exactly. And you could use this, what we're going to talk about, how you could actually use these principles for your, your streaming video stuff.
This could be for anything, any outreach program or whatever, but we're targeting it towards an app because it tends to be, or has been, a fairly new thing within the church.
Right. So we've done podcasts before on why you should consider having an app, why you should consider your mobile devices out there, and more people are using mobile devices, and so we're going to presuppose that you either have an app or you're thinking about it. But let's talk a little bit about this whole deal about your app and how you can, if you're not careful, you can kill it or you can take it to the next level.
Right.
I guess is what we want to try to say here. So we've done this with some other churches before. My own church, Steve's church. We've helped some other churches locally here launching their app. And so when you go to launch the app, you get the app, you get it customized or specialized, whatever, and you introduce it to your church, and there's this thing, I guess you could call it the honeymoon stage.
Right. Well, everyone's, ooh, cool, we got a new app, and everybody's real excited, and leadership's all excited, and and there's a little bit of a buzz around, and people are starting to download the app, and
things are moving along really nice.
Yeah.
And everybody's happy, and they're on top of things, and this is great. But then you come to a point where the momentum begins to drag a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Things begin to slow down. And again, you can use this for almost anything that you're doing in ministry. So how to kill your app. So what generally happens, and this unfortunately falls mostly on whoever the administrator is of your app, you begin to slow down your updates on your app.
Yeah. Or the sponsor of your app too. Well, the administrator of the app.
Yeah, I would say it's the administrator.
Right.
What would you say?
Yeah, some of the things in order to have a successful launch of an app or pretty much anything, there's going to be an administrative role. Then there's a big leadership role. We're going to talk about that as well.
Yeah, we are going to talk about that. So, go ahead.
I was saying, so this, you actually found a really good article that talked about this life cycle. What was that?
By John Holtkamp, Holtkamp. John Holtkamp wrote an article, and I liked what he said. And actually, I think his company is a competitor of ours, and nothing wrong with that. They do mobile apps for churches as well. And so he was kind of going through the whole process of how this works. So really, we're just kind of taking bulletin points from his article and we're giving them limited credit
Yeah,
for
because
it.
it was it was very insightful, very honest.
Yeah.
And so it kind of walked through initially the honeymoon phase, everyone's excited.
Yep.
And then, as you said, interest starts to wane.
Right.
And then we're going to talk about, well, why does interest start to wane?
Okay, so here's why it does. That's a good way to put it. So, usually what happens is on your app, depending on what kind of church app you got, like we have one, churchapplive.com is our product, and we have lots of features on it. Lots of things like you can put sermon notes, you can
Update your calendar. You can put newsletter items. So
archives, audio as well as video if you do streaming video. You can do a lot of things, lots of features. We've got the interactive features where there's polls people can participate in, and
you can check into your service and teaching challenge. So there's a bunch of things that
we have a bunch of features,
right? Yeah. And so initially, what would happen, early in the honeymoon phase, they launch the app and they make sure that let's make sure we got all our media updated, that the latest sermon is there, and that the newsletter article that we're managing is also available in the app. And everybody goes, oh, this is awesome.
Right.
And then what happens is typically somebody's going to go and they go, oh, I've been great, and I've been getting I'm getting all my info from the calendar. Let's go and open the calendar and see what this week's sermon series is about. And you click on the calendar in the app, and the administrator hasn't updated.
Right. It's last week's deal, or 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago. Yeah.
So that immediately sends signals.
Right.
They go, I guess the church doesn't care about that anymore, and says something to me. It says, I can't rely on this anymore.
Right.
So why go back to it?
Well, same with the calendar. I mean, you've got did you was that calendar or newsletter? There's newsletter.
There's newsletter, calendar.
Yeah. So if you don't update your newsletter, or you don't have it on your app and you don't update it there, if you podcast, if you've got your stuff on there and then you don't have one for a few weeks, and everything we've talked about, sermon notes and all that. So all that stuff, what that means is somebody has to really stay on top of this. It's got to be part of whoever the administrator is has to do it.
Right. Because there's people, I mean, I think the big problem from the administrator side of it is they're thinking they don't have real good visibility to who all's using the app and how they're using the app.
Right.
And as this guy had gone through in this article, and actually we have some of the same kind of stats that show how many launches of the app are, and that sort of thing. He was monitoring that because it was his company that he was launching within his church, and he was starting to see the numbers starting to decline. Mm-hmm. And then you say, well, the numbers are declining because people are going in and there's outdated, the thing's not current anymore.
Right. Yeah. And that's generally what happens is, now there's other things though that you need to consider. And that is, you've got to, with anything you do, especially an app, you've got to keep it in front of people.
Right.
So you've got to keep promoting it.
Right. And
all the time.
And some of these pieces go together. So what's going to happen is if you aren't updating it, then you're going to be hesitant about promoting it.
Right. It's a snowball.
Yes. So if if it's not updated and you don't want to go and tell people, check the app for the upcoming sermon series. Slope. Yeah. Yes. So number one is you've got to keep things updated. And then number two is it's got to be promoted. Right. So what are some of the ways that church can promote the app?
So there's lots of different things if you really think about it. I mean, if your church still uses programs or bulletins, depending on what you call it, you should really keep it in there. And you ought to maybe, rephrase it once in a while or put a different graphic in so it's not the same old little thing about check out our app. Maybe say it differently, rephrase it.
And this guy's the article which I really related to. He was talking about how in the early phases it was a pastor up there talking about it and holding his phone up and going, "We got this app," and then 6 weeks later it's relegated to a slide in the announcements that are going on before people arrive, and it's getting less and less prominent in the material that for example, you may have put it in your bulletin 6 weeks ago and you just haven't changed the link that says, or the text that says, download our app.
Right. So you got to keep it fresh. And so I would say, it should be in the program on a regular basis, somewhere in there. Your church probably has some kind of a newsletter, I would think, that you send out either electronically or snail mail, as I call it. It should be in there somewhere. And again, you should freshen it up too. And first of all, if you have it in there all the time, good for you. The next best thing would be to freshen it up and maybe say it differently, use it differently, or graphics, whatever. It's the same thing with the program and the newsletter. So you got to get it out there. The other thing is social media. We've been riding the horse of social media here for a long time, because it's the way people are connecting. And so if you're doing social media, and you should be doing some kind of social media for your church, at least one platform, maybe Facebook or something, you should have it up there occasionally. And when I mean occasionally, I don't know, maybe once a week, stick it up there somewhere. You could put an image, do an image of the app, and then post it on Facebook with the image. And it's no secret that images always get noticed more on Facebook than anything. So if you're doing social stuff, especially Facebook, you should be using images all the time. And so you've got to keep it out there in front of people, social media. If you want to bring it back home to the church location, to the actual facility, I would use something. I would have some kind of a little 6x6 laminated thing you could print up and have them on the table somewhere, your info table, where it advertises the app. And then something that your church does, used to be my church, and then I'm no longer there, but in the bathrooms, in front of the urinals, there's
Well, that's
these
a great marketing piece.
there's these frames that there's your church does it well. I mean, there's you have different events going on, so there might be a flyer or a poster, and they have it, what's the word, framed in a frame in front of the urinal. So at least I don't know what it's like for the women.
We learned that from restaurants and
restaurants and bars and other things.
Yeah.
If you're a guy, you're standing there, looking at the wall of the urinal, and you can put up a poster or something that's framed, and you can move stuff in and out,
Right.
you can, and I would seriously put something, have it plastered different parts of your church location, your facility. The restroom's one of them. I don't know what the women do, but
Right.
I don't
And a lot of this is about the, let's say how to put this there. It's keeping the momentum, right? Or
Right.
keeping the energy level. So this
Right.
is, early on people do a really good job with this, but if you want to get the benefits of the app, you've got to keep this thing. This is kind of, how to keep things in focus and during the long haul.
Yeah. And honestly, I don't know, I know we have different churches listening to us here, but hopefully you're getting visitors on a regular basis. I hope you are. I mean, we get visitors every week at my church. I know you do at yours. And so, when you have that out in front of people, different locations, that they pick up on that. And, hypocrite alert here. I'm one of the people that make a lot of announcements at my church. We have other people now too, but I always notice that when I do announce that we have an app, and there's ways I can do it. There's ways I can say, we got this event going on. For more information, just check out our app. And I mention the app. And whenever whether it's talking about giving online, because again, every good app should have a place for people to donate, so they can click and donate to your church using their app. But whenever I mention my app at my church, I almost always get somebody new signing up for it, or some activity on the app itself, because I brought it in front of people. And all of a sudden somebody goes, "Oh yeah, I forgot about that. I should do that." And
the article that this guy had put together, he mentioned that he was looking every week at the downloads, and when the pastor was mentioning the app in his talk, you pull out your app for the sermon notes and you can follow along or whatever it may be. The app downloads were really high, and he was pointing out that they went into a week where they had a guest pastor and he didn't know about the app and he didn't mention the app, and you could see that the downloads for the app, it correlated very nicely with promotion versus the the activity. And so if you stop promoting and getting it in front of people, then people are going to lose interest.
Yeah.
And so we're going to walk through these phases here, and I would kind of outline these phases as, the honeymoon period where there's the launch, and then there's an area where you want to keep things promoted. And I think once you've reached nirvana is when it's part of the culture where people are, doing the old,
Yeah.
there's an app for that, or whatever it may be. Oh, check the
Right.
app for that.
Right. Yeah, that's making it part of your church culture. And so, again, before we get totally into that, make sure it's in your programs on a regular basis, your newsletter, social media, info table at your church. Mention it in your announcements when you're making announcements. Almost every church I know has announcements. Unfortunately, they're usually too long and too cumbersome. But if you're going to make announcements, you should promote what you've got. And then you touched on it just a minute ago, and that is, I think your pastor needs to at least mention it occasionally. and for our app, churchapplive.com, we actually have tools that the pastor can use as part of his or her sermon.
Right.
So they should really take advantage of that if they've got that available for their app.
Right.
Where it comes to teaching challenge or
Right.
polls.
And the keys are, well, yeah, we want to make sure that your app's used in the church, but why? And well, if we got into this, but the idea here is there's some resources that are available to the congregation that they probably aren't aware of. So
Right.
people they don't realize that they can get connected outside of the Sunday morning service.
Right.
That they can, download sermons, they can stay in touch, they can,
Right. Yeah.
So you're going to have some more committed and connected church members if you get this app in a place where it's humming on its own.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so if you can begin to do that, if you never stop promoting it, that will certainly add, and you won't kill the momentum. So getting back into what you touched on earlier, making it a part of your church culture. So, your leadership team has to buy into this. If you've spent the money and the time to have your own church app, you've got to make sure everybody's on board with it, and not just passively, but I would really push them in a nice way to really download the app themselves.
Right.
Your board, leadership team, whatever you call it, they should be using the app, and they should have it on their devices, and they should be participating.
Yeah, because initially I think a lot of people will get apps for the church because there's a novelty factor, and they could say,
Right.
just like, oh yeah, I've got a website for my church. They go, oh yeah, I've got an app for my church, but you need to take it beyond that and leverage the utility that you're going to get out of the app.
So anything that, if you really want to make this thing a big part of thing, it's got to start with leadership. It's got to start with the senior pastor, the team, the staff, the whole bit. They have got to be using it.
They got to have a vision for how it's going to impact the church.
Yeah. And as you mentioned earlier, there's so much a good mobile app can do in terms of it, more than just, checking the sermon or whatever, but there's so much more it can be done with church check-ins and
prayer
even
boards and
prayer board's another one. Yeah, prayer board. And even in our app, we actually have an element of we call it a gaming element. I don't know if that's the really the best term, but there's an element in our app. Not everybody has this. In fact, I don't know anybody who does, but we have an element where people can participate in things and get points. If you so want to, if as an administrator you so want to use that, a lot of the youth like it, and there's some churches using it.
Well, yeah, and it encourages, and it kind of builds the momentum because it encourages people to, as we've seen, participate more because they want to make sure that they stay up or ahead of their good buddy in the church and their participation levels.
Yeah, and there's that competition aspect that a lot of people have. Let's face it. Just because you're a Christian doesn't mean you're not competitive. Mm-hmm. It's just part of those things. I mean, but the truth is, with at least the app we've designed, is that it can help your spiritual growth. And so I don't mean to make this a commercial for us, but I'm just getting at the point where if you want your app to be successful, whatever you're using, whoever company you're using, you've got to practice these things that we're talking about here. Otherwise, you'll kill the app. which is kind of the subtitle of this message, or the main title, How to Kill Your App.
How to kill your app.
All right. Okay. So leadership team's got to be a part of it. And then one of the things I would really emphasize, and that is, we just mentioned features that we have. Now, every app has maybe a little bit different features, but whatever the features are and you're using, you should really tell people those features and tell them again and tell them again.
Right.
And I mean, just promote it as much as you can. Figure out creative ways to say it and say it maybe differently. But you've got to let people know, hey, we've got some things here on this app that would benefit you spiritually. And
Yeah, and
all
the
that.
guy that had written the article talked about that they got their leadership team together and had a meeting, and this guy actually went through every feature of the app, and he was talking about how the people in there are like, I didn't know I'd do that. I didn't do that. Well, if I can do that, I can do this. And so there's, people begin to understand where, what the power of the app is, and can use that, in their ministry to their advantage.
Yeah. So you got to remind people and do things. So yeah, again, you can do that with your leadership team, but also maybe occasionally, put something in the newsletter, not just promoting the app, but talking specifically about, hey, did you know the church app, whatever, can do this?
And we've seen these principles. I mean, we've a bunch of different churches that have done apps, and we've seen some churches that are just through the roof with the activity,
right,
and others where it kind of went through the honeymoon phase and dwindled off, and then it kind of flatlined next to nothing.
Right. Yeah.
And I think the key is, as we've talked to some of these churches, is every week they're getting in there and saying, they're putting out a push notification, time to check in, check the prayer board, and it was, and it kind of, it builds momentum, and it reinforces, it's a snowball effect for the churches that have done well. And now, some of the churches are, several years into it, and they've got activity levels that are really high, where others kind of went through the honeymoon phase and the thing went away, and they've lost some utility by not making updates and not promoting.
Right.
And
you mentioned push notification. Again, I kind of forgot to mention that, but our app and most decent apps will have some kind of a push notification that you can send out a message to your people. A lot of our churches that have used our app use it for weather-related things. They had to change the service time or change the schedule because of weather back east or whatever. We don't have that issue here in Arizona, but so yeah, there's lots of things you can do to incorporate this.
And I've noticed the migration we've had, with our early MyFlock product, we had a text-based messaging system, and as people are contacting us about the text messaging thing, we reinforce that push notifications is probably going to be a lot less problematic and a lot easier for you. You just get people using your app, and I think migration has gone from text to push notifications, or a more natural way.
Good thing. All right. So anyhow, our tip of the hat to John Holtkamp for actually writing an article, and we're basically just using his material here. But it's definitely good material, and we have an app called Church App Live. So you can go to churchapplive.com. We'll promote our own app here shamelessly. But if you have questions about this, and by the way, you can use this for almost anything. We have customers that do streaming video, and if they do these things we just mentioned, for the most part, all this little outline here about promoting their streaming video, they're going to see more numbers. They're going to see people involved, because people tend to forget, that you've got things going on at the church.
And it's a really healthy thing.
Yeah, it is.
To the growth of the church and just the health of the church.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. So if we can help you with this, if you have questions about apps, we won't try to sell you anything. We'll let you know what we have available, though. You can always contact us, support at churchapplive.com. That's one of our emails. We usually promote support at StreamingChurch.tv, but you can contact us either one of those emails. And you can check us out on iTunes. We are on iTunes. Look for Church Solutions Podcast. Subscribe to us on iTunes and give us a review. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your thoughts even on this very topic about apps. And we've done a podcast in the past about why you should consider getting an app, why you should consider using, taking advantage of mobile devices out there. So we're presupposing that you've kind of bought into the idea, yeah, we should be doing something with a mobile device. And but if we can help you with any of that, and check out our other podcasts, we're also on newmediaministries.tv is a platform we're on. We're also on YouTube with the podcast, the audio version of the YouTube. Just look for StreamingChurch.tv or maybe do a search for Church Solutions Podcast. I don't know how to find us on YouTube. Do you know how to find us on YouTube? I don't know how to find us.
StreamingChurch.tv.
I guess. I don't know. Look there. So we're also we're all over the map. Any of our websites, you can find us. So anyhow, all right, good. So good stuff. I think it's good. Let's start using these tools. We're a tech company, and so we're big on using tech to enhance your ministry, enhance your church. We think it's a great tool that you should use because that's what's happening in the culture today. People are using mobile devices, they're using computers, and they're great tools you can use to help build your church and build other people spiritually. So good deal.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, good deal. I think next week we're going to have a special guest on here. His name is Adam Colwell. He is a fellow who has a company that helps pastors write books and do other things for churches. So we're going to hear from Adam Colwell next week if all goes as well. So if you're a pastor out there, or you have you're in leadership or something, and you know of a pastor who might be interested in maybe writing a book, maybe they've been thinking about writing a book or writing some kind of material for their church, you might want to tune in next week to our Church Solutions podcast, because Adam Colwell is the man who does that, and he can help you get on track, give you some creative ideas for that. So, all right, we're done.
We are done.
Okay.
Right,
well, as we said earlier, if we can help you, if anything, send us an email, support@churchapp.live.com or support at StreamingChurch.tv, and we'll try to help you out. So there you have it. All right. Well, guys, you have yourself a great day. Thanks for listening to the Church Solutions Podcast. I'm Phil Thompson. He's Steve Lacey. We will catch you next time. Have a great day.